And we are back with the 67th episode of the Black Stitch Hockey Cast. The more things change, the more they stay the same. As last week's episode started with the University of Wisconsin winning the Women's Division I National Collegiate National Championship. Today's episode opens with the University of Wisconsin River Falls winning the Division III Women's National Championship in the NCAA, meaning that we have now witnessed Wisconsin win the last two women. Technically, three if you include the fact that this is back-to-back use for River Falls. And as I'm probably going to get myself in a shitload of trouble for saying on X about 30 seconds ago, maybe it's about time we start referring to Wisconsin as the state of hockey, since Minnesota continues to fumble the fucking bag at the collegiate and professional levels. I don't think that's a conversation the people of Minnesota are ready for yet. And that's how we're going to open this, by stoking the fires of the Wisconsin-Minnesota rivalry. Because, quite frankly, I think Minnesota has to do better. Maybe they will. Maybe they won't. But losing to UMass Amherst in the men's bracket and losing to Western Michigan in the men's bracket, not great. Not great. Not bad, but not great. I'm trying to think of a comparison here. I guess the Minnesota Wild do, even though their team has, maybe not as many Minnesotans on it, they really embody the recent Minnesota college hockey energy of being just above mediocre but never being able to finish the job, a la the Minnesota Vikings. Maybe it's just a fucking Minnesota thing.
Hey, credit to the Vikes, though. They do have the third best win percentage in the Super Bowl era and have never had three or more consecutive seasons with a losing record. Talk about a team that just refuses to rebuild, which is something I seem to have known quite a bit about until possibly this year. Of course, you could ask probably 100 different people if the Flyers are actually rebuilding. 50 will say yes and 50 will say no. But, the ambition by way of just having some level of tenacity, even if it is cutting off dead ends that should have been severed already, shows that there's at least some willingness to actually do business and not get caught up in sentimental value. That has been the case time and time again. And yes, naturally, I am still wearing my Cam York jersey that I had on yesterday in recognition of the feat that he accomplished in killing the final boss of hockey terrorism and getting Tortorella fired via their confrontation behind closed doors, which, even though I really want them to retain York for hockey purposes, even if they don't, I will happily keep this in my collection forever, just as a testament to that achievement on his part.
It's beautiful. It's beautiful.
And you know where he played? The University of Michigan. Shout out to when Big Ten was actually good.
I'm just saying, Minnesota men's ice hockey hasn't won a conference championship since 2021. I'm not saying these two things are connected. I'm just saying, Minnesota men's sports have not won a conference championship since Marion Barber died. I ain't saying there's a correlation. I'm just saying it's weird.
That feel when this isn't even our first ever Marion Barber bit on this pod.
Yeah, I wouldn't have brought this up if we hadn't brought Marion Barber up in the past. But, I'm not going to say he's my all-time favorite Minnesota Golden Gopher, because I don't think he is. But if you had to ask me with a gun to my head, he's the first Minnesota Golden Gopher that comes to my head for no real reason. And I know that is really bad with their rich hockey legacy. But, when the first two people I think of are Marion Barber and Brock Faber, and Brock Faber is the beneficiary of recency bias.
You know what though? He did have like a rare arc in that his offensive productivity increase in his junior/final season was actually the result of him putting new things in his offensive toolkit and not just physically developing like most upperclassmen do, which is legitimately impressive. Because when you're a shutdown D man who actually gets better at offense in your like D+3 season, that's pretty fucking remarkable. And he brought them to a national title game, so credit where credit is due. But I honestly think this is also endemic to the fact that Big Ten in general is on a decline, and they might have a huge backbreaker here if, as Penn State and UConn have gotten to overtime, and if Penn State loses this one.
Upon my recollection and research, you know what really tells you how little love I have for the University of Minnesota mentally is the fact that Brock Faber is the first hockey player that came to mind. And Jackson LeCun legitimately is the number one defenseman on my favorite fucking team. That says a lot in and of itself that my brain defaulted to, yeah.
I mean, not for nothing, but it is arguable that Faber has more than arguable, actually, that Faber has greater standing in the NHL canon than LeCun does. Even though LeCun is very low key nice, like I will say, like of the multiple options that they have, he's like the guy I think has maybe arguably the best chance of hitting his ceiling, even though Mintyukov's is higher. That's just kind of how I've gleaned it based off of his development this year, which we've seen him take some really, really impressive steps.
Yeah, I mean, it's really interesting how, Greg Cronin is, I think he coaches in the National Hockey League like most people play Fire Emblem, where, he really just makes his job as hard as possible with his unit deployments. Like, I think of the fact that Pavel Mintyukov is basically playing on the third pairing and has had less opportunity this year. And, like, sure, LeCun, like, I don't think his ceiling is higher, but, in the world of Fire Emblem, he had decent base stats and some pretty high growths. So, Cronin's just doing a weird Fire Emblem run right now with the Ducks Blue Line. And, boy, oh boy.
I think my assessment was is that Mintyukov is the best upside of that group. And in fact, it's not particularly close, but I think the path that LeCun has to hit his specific ceiling is both the easiest and perhaps like the least fine line to walk. But I definitely hear what you're saying about the depth track that Cronin has him on. Although, the distinction between developing an NHL group and a Fire Emblem party is that permadeath has only ever happened in NHL gameplay once in the form of Bill Masterton.
Exceptional. Absolutely exceptional. No notes.
Yeah, I mean, I did kind of regurgitate a bit that I used this weekend, given that there was also a Bill Masterton joke made in our social congregation yesterday. But
Now we just need the blue-haired protagonist of the NHL. You know, I'm gonna leave that to Gavin McKenna to really commit to his roots and dye his hair blue. What do I mean by him committing to his roots and dyeing his hair blue? I'll be honest with you, I have no fucking idea what I'm supposed to mean by that. Um, I, I don't know. Maybe I don't know. Maybe if you throw a rock at Whitestone, Yukon, you might hit an educated human being with falsely dyed blue hair. Couldn't tell you.
you know, I'll say this: it was better than that was probably better than my thought of this pro tag would likely be developed by the North Bay Battalion based off of the conversation we had in our fucking group chat during the opening phases of the OHL postseason.
You know, I was thinking down that road, and I don't think that on a live stream there was a way for me to angle that joke in a way that wasn't poor on me as a human being. So
Exactly.
I sidestepped what could have been a good joke because I am not funny enough in real time to have delivered that with any level of precision. Um,
Yeah, and I think the biggest obstacle there is that there's a way to present that joke while also passing the vibe check, which I don't think would have been possible.
yeah, you know
Circumstances.
when it comes to scoring on the rush, you know, sometimes you're Austin Matthews, and in this instance, I definitely would have been Owen Tippett. And
I was hoping you'd say that.
yeah, you know, out of the plexiglass punishers, it's between Owen Tippett and Anthony Reynoso, and Anthony Reynoso's never punished plexiglass for real, so he's only a plexiglass punisher in theory, not in actuality. Shout out to the boy.
Man.
He now exists in Black Stitch Hockey lore officially.
Well, he's gotten an indirect shout out because I did call back to one of his favorite robot chicken lines once, and I referred to him as Antoine Not-So Randall L. in the process without actually elaborating upon who I was talking about. But now it's more explicit.
Maybe if I remember to love him as a human being, I'll drop a link to one of his streams in a future post as a shout out for him being content fodder in this episode.
Yeah, there was a so it's funny because I was gonna tag him in our Instagram story because of that reel that I shared recently where basically it was a video of a skateboard that was designed for usage on frozen ponds, which was pretty fucking sick. But I believe he has deactivated on that platform again, so I couldn't. But the thought was there.
You know, that checks out for him. And on that note, I'm gonna pivot us over to our we're into what Dev League playoffs at this point.
Quite so. Yeah, a lot of a busy docket on the CHL's part the last couple of days. Since I post graphics for that for the results of every fucking postseason game at the end of the night, much more efficiently than the CHL itself does. Like, cause I'll get it up within minutes of the last game of the night ending, whereas they fucking wait until the morning after for some reason. I will just read today's results for now, as well as look over at some USHL just to give them some more shine so they don't get lost in the shuffle. Because their postseason is starting soon. The playoff picture is starting to shape up a bit more. Let's see. So today, let me take a look. Okay, here we go. So at the start of the docket, we had the Kitchener Rangers defeat the Flint Firebirds by a score of 6-1 in a very physical matchup with a lot of you know, tension and apparent beef on both sides. A lot of big hits. A lot of crossing the line. Even this was a pretty stark contrast to the first game in the series, which was just pure hockey. 4-3 overtime win for Kitchener in Game 1 a couple days back. More of a one-sided affair there. It's interesting because Flint did get a considerable amount of time on the power play, but they just didn't have the talent to really rise to the occasion. Whereas, Kitchener, very good season for them this year, 100 points in the regular season. And of course, we had a great showing from, their marquee name, arguably, in the form of Jack Pridham, who was the game's first star with 2 goals and 2 assists and a +2 to his name. Alex Vermeulen was the second star of the matchup with a goal and a +1, and right-handed defenseman Jakub Kromiak was the third star with a goal and an assist and a +2 for Kitchener in that matchup. Let's see. Let's see. 21 saves in net for Jackson Parsons, one of the best goaltenders in the OHL this year. Kind of a low event game for him in the grand scheme of things, but he rose to the occasion when needed, especially on some of those PKs, to add that last line of defense. Next up on the docket, we had a bit of Sturm und Drang in the London versus Owen Sound matchup initially, as London jumped out to a 4-0 lead, grew it over the course of the first period with 4 unanswered goals. But of course, Owen Sound had 3 goals to respond with that were all unanswered through the course of the second period to narrow it to a 1-goal deficit. However, on the power play, Kasper Halttunen brought the lead to 5-3 late into the third, and Denver Barkey, who had a terrific matchup in this game, more on that momentarily. Terrific performance by him. He had the empty net goal to ice it and bring this final score to 6-3 as London takes a 2-0 lead in that series. Barkey was the first star with 2 goals and 3 assists, having both opened the scoring and closed it in that matchup with a +2. Landon Sim was the second star, 1 goal and 1 assist in the matchup for him. And Kasper Halttunen had a goal and an assist for the third star selection in the game. Good looks for the, very coveted, somewhat underrated to a degree, considering the depth of their pool. But, with him having a good future, probably as a power play triggerman even for the San Jose Sharks. Obviously doing what he does best to serve as the difference maker, a source, even if it wasn't the official game winner. But next up in today's slate, we had Kingston versus Sudbury. The Frontenac's ultimately defeated the Wolves by a score of 4-3 in Game 2 of that playoff series. Let's see. What do we got for some particulars? 49 shots for them on net in that 2 OT matchup, although just cumulatively 11 over the course of the 2 overtimes. The hero of the game was Gage Hayes of Kingston. He was given the second star for that goal and his assist, as well as a +2. The first star was Cedric Queendon, who had 2 goals for Kingston. Nathan Villeneuve of Sudbury was the third star with 2 goals, 1 assist, and a +1. Very, nice to see through the early phases of this postseason that we had something of a playoff epic over in the OHL, with that giving Kingston a comfortable 2-0 lead in the series to start things off. Much rather have that in a series than in a game. But all curse references aside, next up on the docket, the Oshawa Generals versus Brampton Steelheads game is currently in progress. Brampton still has a 1-goal lead, 1-0 over Oshawa in that Eastern Conference matchup. Let's see. The goal was tallied by Luke Misa, Calgary Flames prospect, at 19:11 of the first period. Nothing that serves as a backbreaker more than a goal allowed inside the final minute of a period. So I'm sure Ty Anderson would be shaking his head at that one. We'll see if Oshawa has any sort of response before this one is up. We're at about just before the halfway mark. A 4-on-4 just ended in that game. So we'll see who rises to the occasion after that. Brantford Bulldogs versus North Bay Battalion just kicked off. We're just about past the halfway mark in that into the first. No score yet in that game. Relatively low event. Only a cumulative 4 shots on net total. We'll see how that one ends up shaking out. No QMJHL games today, nor tomorrow. The Q seems to be taking a bit of a break. They'll return on Tuesday. But over in the WHL, we had a 5-1 victory for the Calgary Hitmen over the Saskatoon Blades to let's see, take I believe a 2-0 lead in that series if memory serves. Let me just double check on that one more time. Okay. Yes. Yeah. Okay. So with them, that was a pretty emphatic victory on their part. 48 shots on goal to Saskatoon's 23. Really rising to the occasion as franchise namesake as well as co-founder Brett the Hitman Hart was in attendance as he has kind of commenced a bit of a celebration of his impending third-time induction into the WWE Hall of Fame, which of course honors his classic, very intense matchup with Stone Cold Steve Austin at WrestleMania 13 in what is that? I believe 1997. Yes, not long before his pretty dramatic departure from the company in the wake of the Montreal screw job between him and his rival Shawn Michaels. A lot of, that was a very important sequence in the history of that industry. Definitely marked a transition. Just that match itself between Austin and Hart. And then, of course, some subsequent storylines, including Hart's final one from the company. sort of transitioning them into the edgier phase and kicking off the Attitude Era for all intents and purposes while he departed for their rival WCW. To commend the guys who got the job done on the ice, Brendan Gorzinski had the first star selection in the game with a 1 goal and 1 assist performance along with a +2. Ethan Moore had 1 goal and 1 assist for the second star, and Callum Parker had 1 goal and a +1 for the third star selection. Let's see. Notably, I will also commend 2025 draft eligible forward Ben Kindle for his 2 assists in that game, as well as Tanner Howe for having the empty net goal that ultimately iced it, as well as 1 assist of his own. Let's see. Vancouver Giants versus Spokane Chiefs just kicked off not long ago. Still no score in that game as the first period approaches its end. We'll see how that one turns out. Obviously, Spokane favored in this matchup with their very, very talented roster, but we have had some surprises here and there throughout the CHL postseason games and series, most notably with some pretty disappointing showings from Saginaw over in the O, for instance, with them having given up combined 17 goals in their first 2 games. Of course, they've scored 10, but it's difficult seeing them in that position, against an Erie Otters squad who is still short of their best player in the form of Matthew Schaefer. So with between that and Saginaw being the higher seed, it's just not really how you'd want things to start off. Now they have to prove themselves on the road, having dropped the first 2 games at home in that series. But over to the USHL, the postseason picture has started to shape up a bit, as mentioned before. I believe the Fargo Force, defending Clark Cup champions, were the most recent team to clinch a berth. But let me take a look at the other clinchers. The Western Conference, let's see, yeah. Lincoln, obviously, first place. They have their seed already cemented. The Sioux Falls Stampede are in second place. They got their berth clinched. Waterloo, third place. Let's see, with 72 points. Sioux City Musketeers are in with 63 points at fourth place, and the Tri-City Storm and Fargo Force, with the latter having been referenced previously, having gotten the most recent seeds at 5th and 6th. Both are currently tied with 58 points, albeit Tri-City has the tiebreaker advantage with 1 more win to their name, as well as a game in hand. Over in the Eastern Conference, the Madison Capitals, Dubuque Fighting States, Muskegon Lumberjacks, and Youngstown Phantoms have the 1, 2, 3, 4 spots. All have clinched their playoff positions already. Dubuque being just 1 point behind Madison with 80 to 79 respectively. Definitely 2 teams to really keep an eye out for. I definitely have a lot of faith in Dubuque's group. As I've noted this year, they have a pretty impressive roster that's, really risen to the occasion in the Johnny Gaudreau tribute season effectively. Muskegon has 78 points for third place, and Youngstown has 77 for that 4th spot, as well as a game in hand. So definitely a very tight race at the top of the East. Probably, it's pretty clear who, the top competitors are for that spot. And just for who's going to end up clinching the conference title. And I imagine, it just that we could well end up in a position where, one playoff series is kind of like a big determining factor in how the overall picture shapes up. Like whoever wins that is like de facto champion for all intents and purposes. But I do have to say I do really believe that Dubuque could end up winning it all when all is said and done. But you never know. It's definitely some. It's a top-heavy competition this year in the USHL, but one where there are a few viable challengers to the throne. And I think that wraps it up for this week's Dev Updates.
Now, the pained look on my face had nothing to do with the updates. It was the most recent tweet from Freeds of, I thought VCR was a crime against God. I don't know what's worse, referring to Toronto as Toto or Anaheim as AIM. AIM. Very rarely on this podcast do I see something so fucking viscerally offensive to me that it alters my train of thought, and I gotta give it credit to him. Just when I thought he couldn't stoop any lower, he finds a way for me to actually vomit in my brain.
I've kind of like as much as I want to get mad at those, I just don't even bother giving it any sort of response anymore. Like not even internally, because I know like it's just giving him what he wants. Because I've concluded that him giving like the worst possible acronyms to these teams is a deliberate troll job. Like I feel like
100%.
I feel like there was at least a point where he was maybe doing it unintentionally, but then he realized it was pissing people off, so he just committed to the bit and started going as over the top on purpose. And then like it stopped being funny because he was becoming self-aware, and there's nothing worse than a self-aware Freege.
When he did VCR, I didn't hate it because as somebody who has worked in the operations business sphere for as long as I did, like I'm so used to strange acronyms and like not to be a weirdo, but I actually thought VCR made more sense than VAN. And the fact of like if I see VCR, like if I wasn't conditioned by 25 years of playing EA NHL games, like you can clearly understand that is actually a pretty logical phonetic based consonant breakdown of Vancouver.
Yeah, it's like one of those things that would make sense for like an airport code sort of thing. Like that like like those sort of naming conventions are like much more standard to use than like the first three letters, basically for that reason. But that one is okay, and it is even funny in like a lowbrow way. Like it definitely yielded some good memes, but like he's just gone so ridiculously over the top with that. Like if memory serves, I think he used Utica for the United States team at one point. I'm like, dude, this shit isn't funny. Just stop. Like that's like he's like trying to give himself like personality while also taking the piss, and sort of jabbing at people. And I'm like, is this like your Boucher-Gross phase or something? God damn.
And my initial thought is, remember in Shell 2003, I think, in 2002, if I recall correctly, Columbus was some weird emulsification of letters, where it was like CMB or CLM or some random bullshit before the NHL figured out the CBJ configuration. And I remember that like going back to those old Shell games, Definitely visually feels weird. But yeah, you know, that's all this really makes me think of. Is playing Cello 3, but like not as much fun. I also hate that I can Google Columbus Blue Jackets NHL 03 and somehow one of the first graphics I get is from Cello 4. Really gotta love SEO right there. I think it's even better that it's I think a picture of David Vaborny of all people, which is
Damn.
if I had $1 for every time I've thought about David Vaborny in the last decade,
Now, is
uh,
that a deeper cut than the Danny Sivrit nod slash reference I made in the GC recently?
you know, it might be. Shout out to David Vaborny as well for being a short king. And speaking of the GC, a product of the 1993 NHL draft. You know, one of these days, I need to do an offshoot podcast of me just connecting random bullshit in hockey history that has no correlation to one another. Like that episode of AVGN where with Hong Kong 97. Like, I think I really just need to really lean into this bullshit skill I have of connecting seemingly unrelated things. Tells me I could write for Family Guy. I wish I had a good segue for that, but there's really like I could segue that into the Providence Bruins having a pretty amusing season to really try to force the Rhode Island connection more, but I mean I've just done it, but man, like we don't talk about enough AHL for that to have been organic.
Yeah, it's they get their shout outs very intermittently, and besides, like we all know now, thanks to the brilliance of a certain member of Flyers Twitter, that the AHL is just a bust cultivator, anyways, and a killer of careers.
Though, let's face it, at right now, Sal Virginia is truly living up to being the Peter Griffin of college hockey. Like
For an update on Brampton versus Oshawa, the second period is just coming to a close. Yes. Okay, they did let the second stick by, although not without a fracas between the two teams, with Brampton up 2-0. Kind of short-lived. That's because they had Callum Ritchie and Colby Barlow. And Beckett Seneca, for that matter, actually. Like, they just had all their stars congregating instead of anybody who was willing to face the consequences of throwing a cross-check into an opposing player's teeth. But back on the Rhode Island topic.
yeah, I don't think exiting your conference without a plan
Yeah.
really just feels like the most and like I get it, the NEHC like collapsed on itself, but like how the fuck do you just not end up in a conference and then that like it's some big Peter Griffin energy. And I know from what the D3 hockey guys are saying, like, oh, they've looked at, going to the UCHC, but like
Boucher.
that's not gonna work. Like they stiffed the CNE like years ago, and if I'm Regina at this point, not the city in Saskatchewan for those who are gonna get this mixed up if they just catch it at the wrong moment here. Why not just join the fucking mask hack? Just do it. Just take the piss. Join the mask hack. Beat up on all the shitty Massachusetts schools. Like you already played Salem State last year. Like, you're not that far from any of them. Just do it. Just if you're better off in the mask hack than being independent.
Yeah.
Now, we all know that that's not gonna happen, but oh god, UConn challenging for a 5-minute major in overtime is the most UConn shit I've ever seen. um, yeah, you know that's also some Peter Griffin energy.
Let's see. The goal to put Brampton up 2-0 was scored by Carson Rakoff, by the way, with assists going to Luke Misa and Finn Harding. So a good little showing there for some of their talents. Of course, both the goal scorer and the primary assist getter being players with NHL rights with Western Conference teams. Rakoff, of course, being property of the Seattle Kraken, and Misa being a Calgary Flame prospect, as noted before. So Brampton's getting the job done right now. Of course, I don't love the fact that they're entering the third period with a 2-0 lead against a team that had a pretty decisive advantage over them in the last game and probably has more talent overall. But what are you gonna do?
Suffer.
Quite possibly. Shout out to the Halifax Mooseheads for having erased a 2-0 lead against the Drummondville Voltigeurs in Game 1 of their QMJHL playoff series. Like, I loved being able to drop that in the GC. I was just like, guess what lead Drummondville choked Halifax today, LOL. And you're just like, oof. Because you knew right away.
You know, God bless the Halifax Mooseheads. That's it. That's my whole spiel there. Just I ain't saying they're my favorite team from the Q, but like they got steez.
They've got audacity as well because they both, before exceptional player status was an established practice, they attempted to procure it for Sidney Crosby. Of course, they were unsuccessful, and he spent his time immediately in the queue, immediately prior to his time in the queue, playing AAA with Shattuck St. Mary's. Decision made by him and his parents to divert away some media scrupiny that he would have been under and already was, for that matter, as well as the fact that both parents of opposing players and the opposing players themselves were determined to make his life miserable every time he set his foot into a rink or on an ice surface. Very smart decision on their part. But beyond that, they also spent a first-round pick, 15th overall, on Jack Eichel in the 2013 QMJHL draft, knowing full well that he was very, very low shot to ever play any form of CHL hockey. And I was just like, man, that was fucking stupid as shit. Because, like, really, like, when, you spend that sort of pick on a player that's very unlikely to play for you in any of the CHL entry draft / priority selections, it's usually a later round pick. Like, I mean, at least when the London Knights threw a dart at James Higgins, it was in like the 6th or 7th round, somewhere thereabouts. Whereas these motherfuckers were literally like, yeah, uh, 2012. It must have been. Yeah, that makes sense. These dudes really just went for it with their first round selection, and I'm like, yeah, not very smart, but I do respect some audaciousness from time to time, as is well established by my fondness for teams taking intense risks with and even going as far as to just be so good at closing that they make guys available that shouldn't be available, i.e., my stated fondness for the much maligned Kelly McCrimmon for that particular reason, as well as the slightly less maligned, albeit his much treated as heels in the form of Bill Zito.
I also have a bias towards the Halifax Mooseheads, and I don't know if there's history predating it, but I believe their first round pick in NHL history was Ducks legend Jean-Sébastien Giguère, which is a nice little, you know, tidbit of why I'll always love them.
Hell yeah.
God bless Halifax. I mean, just Halifax in general. No notes. Great city. Great junior hockey team. Their only downside is they play in the queue. And there's not a whole lot they can do about that. There's a thing called geography that gets in the way of them leaving. We can't all be the Winnipeg Jets playing in the Southeast Division.
Man, the first round of that 2012 QMJHL draft was actually pretty rough, to say the least. I mean, of the 18 players selected, let's see, only 6 of them went on to have any NHL experience. And besides Jack Eichel's selection at 15th, those players were Clark Bishop, Alexander Carrier, Nicolas Ave-Kubo, Matthew Highmore, and Anthony Richard, also known as Tony Dick. So, like, why wouldn't you just chance it and take Jack Eichel at that point? Hell, let's see. How many fucking players taken in this draft, irrespective of whether or not they even reported to their team that took them or even went on to play NHL hockey at all? Let's see. Bokondiji Mama,
Imama.
Connor Garland, Giovanni Fiore, let's see, Jimmy Vesey, John Hayden, and that's it. Yeah, we've established that, the QMJHL is definitely very, they got to kind of really have like a very, very good dev class in order for them to really have much of a talent pool to select from as is, which is why, like, as much as I want for sentimental reasons, and for maybe even like, experiential advancement of my own, just to, get involved in that community and see what happens in a direct capacity. A New England-based QMJHL expansion franchise, it is just going to dilute their talent pool even further, which, like, probably not great for their overall trajectory as a league. Like, they're the last of those leagues that 3 leagues that really needs expansion.
If they did end up putting a team in Manchester, wink, wink, nudge, nudge, I'd probably end up being a season ticket holder. For whatever that's worth.
Yeah, I would be there for sure. Like, I would be all over it. And hell, they've like a more like fringe candidate has been kicked around. That's been kicked around as Lowell, Massachusetts, which even better, really. And you know what's funny is I bet that team would probably play at the Janus, not even the August, but like, I would be all over that. But God, it's just as good as like for one thing, I hope from a business standpoint that team is more profitable than the successful but never in the financial respect Lewiston Maniacs experiment. God bless that team, for having been so good on the ice and having absolutely phenomenal branding, including one of the greatest logos in CHL history, as we have acknowledged on multiple occasions. But literally, just terrible ownership and not an ideal market for them to be in either. And just like from you're gonna have even more guys floating around in the market of talent in the queue that don't really belong at that level. Taking it to just taking another step in that direction is probably what's going to occur.
Yeah.
Oh, speaking of, that reminds me that on a news standpoint, so some logistics for the changes of dynamic of the WHL with their expansion have been announced. So one for one, we know that for a fact that the Penticton Vs have been added as an expansion franchise coming from the BCHL. They will have both an expansion draft as well as the fourth overall selection in the WHL Bantam draft this year. Whereas a Chilliwack expansion team, whose branding will be determined including name and logo, will be determined at a later time, will be joining in 2026-27 as opposed to the Vs joining in 25-26. I haven't seen what the situation is pertaining to whether or not Penticton will be able to retain some of their existing talent on their current roster. One player that has been inquired about a considerable amount by a lot of interested parties was Eli McCamey, who of course is a 2009 who is considered pretty coveted prospect for the 2027 NHL entry draft, and whether or not they would be able to retain his services for the coming season before he, of course, begins NCAA play at the University of North Dakota in 2026-27. But I don't really know what the status of that is and if they would be able to keep him. But I imagine that they will have the option of protecting some players if they see it conducive to them. There's probably a cap on it, but that's just speculation on my part. I don't know for sure. If I can get a solid answer on that, I will share that on our X, and give credit to whoever, whichever source has that info. But yeah, interesting dynamic changes there. Really, the only off-ice developments that have occurred in the last week that were really monumental that occurred. Not to take anything away from some of the ATOs and ELCs that have been signed in recent times, but definitely the biggest one with huge landscape implications.
Sorry, some weird shit's going on in the D3 National Championship game. An interference call and a Hobart stick ended up being ejected into the crowd. That's the second stick that has somehow found its way into the Utica crowd tonight, and we're not even halfway into this game, and that's just fucking weird, man.
That is.
Definitely some wild shit going on in central eastern New York. Because, it's kind of hard to... Utica's not really, upstate, and it's definitely not west. Weird.
Mm-hmm.
Also, after watching last year's national championship game,
Mm-hmm.
every single single D3 Frozen 4 site moving forward needs to have at least a professional level broadcast angle, because this shit actually looks like it fucking matters, which is a nice change from the D3 content I've watched all year.
Oh yeah. Yeah, it was like actually depressing, like last year covering how things like kicked off, like, or how things ended between because I was like, really going in on and like doing like the major leg work for like the national tournament last year, uh and really took over as our main correspondent. But like, and I watched some fucking great action and wrote about it as a consequence. But like watching like Hobart versus Trinity last year was brutal, because like I've seen better turnout at MIAA in the recent past than that game, and the presentation wasn't great either. Like I literally just felt like I was watching community access television rather than a national championship for any NCAA program of any kind.
Like this year's Frozen 4 has really felt like a spectacle, even though it's only in a 2,000 seater right now, and it's
Penn State
nice.
just scored the OTGWG, sending themselves to their first ever Frozen Four, by the way.
Damn, that's I mean, I can't really say I'm surprised. You know, my all power to Penn State, and I respect what they've done. But when you're a 4 seed in the tournament and you get home ice advantage, that is kind of bullshit.
Yeah.
And I know that like the same exact fucking thing happened here in the D3 national run of 4 seed Utica also having home ice, but like the Nexus Center isn't their home rink. Like this is where their women's team plays, so it's not like this is a locker room in a building that they've played half of their home game, like half their games in this year,
Yeah.
as they take a 1-0 lead. Like Penn State getting 2 home games in the national championship tournament does feel a little cheap for teams like UConn and Maine, who had to actually go out and earn their spots there, and won harder matchups. But it is what it is.
I love how they focus in on someone from their student section who's just on her phone at that moment, doesn't even have like an even like more than slightly content look on her face.
But they're on to what BU in the Frozen Four. So that'll be fun. Somehow, though, I don't think it's going to be as much fun as this Utica Hobart game. Will the quality of hockey be better? Yes. Will the game be as much fun? No. And on that note, I think it's a good time to pivot to our big finish, as Matthew Wood had an assist on that Utica goal. No, not that Matthew Wood, the other Matthew Wood, for those of you at home who don't know who Matthew Wood is.
So you know, I give all the credit in the world to Carson Dorwart for earning a free agent contract with us as his collegiate career has come to an end. It wasn't really my preferred target, really. And I think it's kind of indicative of them having a type when it comes to these NCAA guys. But I'm not going to say he doesn't deserve to be playing professional hockey either. He definitely has earned that much. It's a signing I'm happier about of that type than the Hunter McDonald signing of the recent past. But I don't get why they're determined to give him this look in the NHL, whereas they relegated Nikita Grabenkin, a guy who would probably have benefited from playing the against the top level of competition more at this particular stage in his dev, and being who he is. Like, just considering where these players came from and what their respective ceilings appear to be, it really should have been Dorwart to Lehigh Valley, and like you know, and Grabenkin developing in the top pro league with the Flyers from the jump, which no longer is an option for us unless, of course, there's an injury. With us having used all of our non-emergency call-ups for this year, I don't know what it is. It's just like, if it's just like we don't want our NCAA guys going to the AHL as a particular risk, having just been jailed emotionally by the Cutter Gauthier situation forever, then that's a pretty foolish reason. Like, we can't just be gun shy about this stuff forever, even if when it doesn't serve us any benefit to do so. Like, we're not trying to win, but I just don't really feel like this particular player is going to gain anything from getting reps in the NHL at this particular stage in his career. So, I don't know. I'm not a big fan of that call.
Before I pivot to a big finish, real interesting moment in our D3 National Championship game is almost had a incident of Damon Beaver. From what it looks like, somebody gashing open his left hand in a sequence where he also lost his mask in the crease. Almost had a double whammy there with an errant shot. We almost had the risk of a concussion and a possible skate. Whew. Good on the refs to get that blown dead, but a real scary scene right there almost occurred. For a big finish, really just wanted to kind of click back to our opening. Huge shout out to River Falls taking home back-to-back national championships, and women's D3 college hockey. Yet again another 4 seed that somehow ended up hosting a national championship tournament. Tell me where you've heard that story this year so far. But that notwithstanding, I mean, amazing program, one of the true prides of the West. They really earned it. Great season, great team. You love to see, the dominance from them. You love to see what they're going to do for what they are doing for Wisconsin women's hockey, both at the D1 and D3 levels. Just real great stuff, real great content. Especially provided that, men's ice hockey in Wisconsin was less than impressive this year. Really just love to see that for them.
For a quick update on the Spokane Chiefs versus Vancouver Giants game, which is now very early into the second period. Mathis Preston has both goals in this game, having scored at the 19:11 mark, with assists going to Chase Harrington and, of course, 2024 Mr. Irrelevant, Nathan Mays, property of the Toronto Maple Leafs. And Preston scoring again 29 seconds into the second period as Spokane has a 2-0 lead in this one after a period and some change. Very good snipe on that second goal that I'm now admiring the replay of. Of course, we know Preston, pure shooter, guy I love for his right-handed sniping ability. Definitely a guy to keep a lookout for as a potential top 10 selection in 2026. But yeah, let's see. Still no score in the Battalion Bulldogs game after one. Still 2-0 Brampton. Currently 4-on-4 is about to wrap up in that game against Oshawa yet again. Let's see. Shots are, oh my fucking God, 32-18. Bad PDO game for Oshawa so far. Of course, they still have 14 minutes and 25 seconds of regulation time left. So we'll see. They can mount a comeback here. They definitely have a favorable deficit, as much of an oxymoron as that sounds. But yeah, this week, a lot of exciting stuff down the stretch. The NHL regular season is approaching its end. The tank race is pretty entertaining this year. As There's something kind of on the line. There isn't a generational talent in this draft class, but those top picks are definitely coveted due to drop off in talent. So seeing teams not trying to, but being in the battle of suck is pretty entertaining, considering what's at stake. The OV chase is still very much on the line. The top competitive teams in the league, some health issues here and there, but, they're playing some good hockey as well. Nearly, it's the top and the bottom that are providing the most entertainment, seemingly nobody wants those bottom wild card spots, like in the Eastern Conference, for example. But we'll see how it all shakes out. And of course, the Dev Leagues are giving us some great entertainment. NCAA, USHL, CHL, some top level competitive stuff going on that I have been enjoying monitoring and covering and sharing with everyone. And we thank everybody for their support and their engagement. We're really going to try to ramp up the intensity with the rate at which content comes out in the coming times. And we're looking forward to sharing it with you all. As far as this goes, thank you to everybody who tuned in. Thank you to everyone who's checking us out on Spotify and YouTube. We'll see you again soon. Take care, everybody. Have a great night.